This episode has been brought to you by FlowState, the unlimited Webflow development service. Find out more at flowstate.dev. And now introducing FlowState Go, a one-shot development consultation. Okay, today I'm going to be taking you through a website I recently built for one of my favorite AI artists, X New Worlds, and I did it using Webstudio. If you're a fan of the channel, then you'll know that I love exploring new no-code tools. Well, there's nothing really like building a website from start to finish using the tools, so that's why I thought I'd give Webstudio a try. And they recently announced their CMS integration, which sounded great. Basically, you can have a CMS in something like Airtable and consume it in your Webstudio app. The other cool aspect of it is that I don't need to keep paying for Webstudio. I can build or design my Webstudio website in the tool, bring it down and then sync it to my own hosting, so I can host it anywhere that I want, on any platform I want. It's just so flexible with it. So I thought this would be a perfect solution, because not only did I want to kind of cut costs for X New Worlds and their ongoing platform fees when they're not really going to be touching the design all that much, I also just saw it as an opportunity to try out Webstudio and see what it has to offer. So let's dive in. I'll show you some of the cool aspects of the tool, some of the challenges I faced, and hopefully by the end of it, you yourself might be using Webstudio by the end. I'm not sponsored. I'm not affiliated with them whatsoever. So anyway, with that being said, let's jump into Webstudio and I'll show you a little bit about some of the cool stuff we built. So let's have a quick look at the design. You see it's super simple, this design. It's not like meant to be, I mean, there's a couple of reasons why it's super simple. We want to get this ready for an exhibition that's coming up, and also want to kind of highlight the work and show the artwork as the front and center of the website. So given that, this is where I thought Webstudio would be a perfect tool to create this website. Now, here will be like a list of the Instagram feed of X New World's artwork. We've got like an about page here, so we've got some exhibitions that are coming up, again useful for a CMS entry or a CMS collection, and then some featured articles here, again CMS entry. So not overly complex, and a contact page and all the rest of it. And then this page will be like project work that's under NDA. So we need to create some sort of auth system, some sort of login system that they can see, or they can give the username and password to. Something interesting to say about all of these different aspects, and we'll go through it in this episode. So let's open up Webstudio, and yes, they do have a desktop application, which is pretty fantastic. Now, fortunately, because I've recorded this video so many times, my monthly service with Webstudio has run out. But with that, I'll take this as an opportunity to say, like, this is the thing that I think is the most valuable aspect of Webstudio, is that it's the designer first and foremost. It tries to separate itself from the CMS, the hosting, and all the rest of it. So if you're someone who just needs the design aspects of Webflow, consider Webstudio, because I paid for this for a month, built the website, and now I'm out and I'm hosting it on Vercel, I think, as well. So really, really simple to do all that. Let's give you a sneak peek about what the end result is. So here you can see, here's the feed here, and we've got a nice little hover effect that's happening on the images, which is cool. The videos play, and that's kind of it. It's pretty simple. And if we go to Airtable here, we've got the CMS, which X New Worlds is free to upload and change things themselves. So we'll go through all this bit by bit, show all the different cool technologies we use. Now, the first one is probably the most difficult to was the most difficult to try and figure out. And you'll have this whether you're on Webstudio, whether you're on Webflow, but ultimately, the synchronization between Instagram and this website meant that we could create a Zapier zap that every time they post to Instagram, we upload the information to our Airtable. But this could be just as easy be a Webflow CMS collection or anything. The problem is that the media URL that you use for these images and videos and stuff, that actually expires. So we found an extension that downloads those images or videos or whatever from this URL, basically. Unfortunately, you have to pay for Airtable to run that command or run that script every time a new entry to the database happens. We don't want to pay for Airtable, truthfully. We wanted to keep costs down and whatever. It's just a hobby website. So we run that script manually, and as you can see here, we've actually got three where uploaded they've uploaded the videos manually rather than through the Instagram post. So these are the bare minimum three fields that were required here. But the point is that we needed to get a way to get from the URL, download that video and put it into our database. And we're able to do this with Airtable. I'm not sure how you would even do that with Webflow, to be honest. There might be something that you can do in a Zap or whatever, but I couldn't find anything that would download that video and then upload it to Airtable, because that would have been an even nicer way to do it. But point is, this was really, really tricky to get around. And it's still not perfect because, again, they'll have to run that script every time they upload to Instagram. With that aside, let's just take a look at how the website functions. And this was a pretty new feature of Webstudio, which is the CMS thing. And again, because I don't have a pro account anymore, I'm unable to kind of really dig in and show you. But ultimately, you create a new, when you create a collection list, and you can select resource and provide a URL of wherever it is you want to get that data from. And if you're used to Wiz, if you've used Wiz, this is a pretty straightforward and quite common way of doing things, and it's really nice. So we have our URL here, which fetches the specific table inside of Airtable, which is called Instagram feed. And then we filter by the column that says not hide. So basically when we have show here, we only get those items. And this is really good. And Webflow has just introduced this filtering for their API, is that we only get up to 100 results in one request. By filtering, this enables us to have, I'm guessing there's probably about 20 there. It enables us just to get those 20, and that really reduces the overhead and the need to do any sort of filtering on the Webstudio side. So that was really cool to get that filtering up and running. And we can pass bearer tokens. This all happens before the page loads, so there's no waiting for it. SEO isn't a big deal or anything like that. And then here, you then take that collection and then you navigate through the different objects to get that array, because you need an array to loop through on that collection things. And then within each of these items, we've got two items here. We've got the image, which very, very straightforward. We have an image that we only show when the media field media type is not video, but we could have Instagram carousel item or image. So I just put video, makes it a bit easier to understand. So we only show that when it's an image or a carousel reel, and then we set the source to that attachment URL that's been downloaded. And this works with both video and the images, because as I say, they will be downloaded, whether it's an image or a video, it will always be downloaded in here. So that's pretty straightforward, and I eagerly load these because I'll take you through some JavaScript, some loading JavaScript that I do later on, and I want to make sure everything's loaded and we're not relying on any kind of lazy loading or anything like that, because we're going to build our own lazy loading. And then this is the tricky one. So Webstudio don't have a native video element, and I'll put a request in, so this should be coming pretty soon, but it doesn't have a native video element where I can just provide it as source. So we needed a way to get the videos into our feed here. And I did that by creating a box and then putting a data video property with the value being the URL. And once again, we're showing this if it equals video. And maybe I can even show you actually. We have an empty div with, here it is, data video, and then it's got that URL on there. So now we go into our JavaScript. I can take you through the JavaScript function here that we use to load it all. Now you'll see here we've got this what they call an iffy, and it's a self-invoking function, and we need this. Long story short, is because the technology that Webstudio is built in, or builds the website in, is called Remix. And if we didn't have an iffy, if you know anything about hoisting or scope, if we didn't have the iffy, the variables that we would create get moved to the global scope. The way that Remix works is that anything global doesn't get overwritten or doesn't get wiped out on page navigation. So if we went to another page and then came back to this one, it would say that Instagram videos has already been declared, and it would break the code. You could probably fix it by using a var, but what's the fun in that? It's not modern code. So you need ifs. You could also use type module, but just for like this, but just for compatibility's sake, because ifs it will just work. It won't. It doesn't need any sort of modern technology or anything like that. Seemed like the best way to go and do things. The other aspect is because this is code, and there's a bit of an explanation here. If this is code such as a HTML element, an SVG, or something that needs to be available on page load, you can leave this unchecked. But if it's code that's kind of going to change things, and you can see we've got GSAP in here, we need to manipulate the DOM. So we want to make sure this is run only on client side. And I'm just sharing these things because these are things that I learned really digging into Webstudio. So you're really going to get an outline of techniques used to use Webstudio effectively in this episode, hopefully. So anyway, we're going to get all of our videos with that data video attribute. So we're not going to get any images. We're just going to get a list of empty divs with a data video attribute. And then we build up our timeline, which essentially is fading in those images and moving them over to the right. So now this is where we start to build or add our videos to the page. So we loop through all of our, in fact, let's just, I mean, this might be cleaner here, just to move that down there so it's all together. If I'm using them, no, good. If there's a link for those videos, we loop through them all and we get that URL that we've put in the attribute data video. So the current URL is stored here, and then we just create a video element and a source element, and then we bind URL to the source of the source element, and then we set a bunch of attributes like the video type. We don't want any controls. We want it to mute. We want it to autoplay because you need it muted to be able to autoplay. Plays in line so it doesn't open up on a mobile phone or anything like that. And we want it to loop. And then we just add that video element to the page, and we're programmatically creating HTML elements on the fly. Until Webstudio add a native video element, unfortunately, this is the kind of way we had to do it. So now let's get to the lazy loading aspect of this, this page. We get all of the Instagram Reel videos because now they've been added to the page. We want to get those, all of the video items, right? And then we slice the first 6 because again, I mean, even on desktop here at the top of the page, you can only really see 6 items. Now, 6 videos because there's there's 2 images. So really we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So actually those are off the page anyway. The reason why we're doing this is because I want this to be as performant as possible. I could wait until all of the videos have downloaded, but that we'd be waiting for too long. I want to get this snappy on it to feel really snappy, but also not have things pop in, because what was happening when we didn't have this mechanism of laser, and you'd see them all kind of pop in. The only reason, and just lastly, the only reason why we're using video is because if 6 videos have loaded, you can pretty much guarantee that 6 images have downloaded at least. So we're just trying to, yeah, hard code our way through this based on some assumptions, which I think are pretty fair assumptions, specifically the 6 video thing loading before the images and all the rest of it. Anyway, each of those videos, we had an event listener on loaded metadata on when the metadata is loaded. Every time the metadata is loaded, we increase this number here of loaded items. And with each increment, we expand that line. You'll see it just zoom open now because everything's kind of loaded in cache. But you'll see that width slowly increase with every loaded item using GSAP. And then when, I mean, all these hard-coded numbers, these might as well be all like the same and whatever. Don't really know why they are not hard-coded or are hard-coded. Anyway, once they've all loaded, we play that animation. So everything just looks nice and smooth. A couple of elements here just to make them all squares. And then this is the code we used for that cool melting displacement thing that they wanted on the videos, on the hover of those videos. So that's kind of it. I guess the only thing to add here is that we've got the display. We needed a way to get the displacement image, and I didn't want to host it on something like AWS or an external thing. And the asset library inside of Webstudio, they don't give you a public URL because they don't want to become an asset store, which is all fair enough. So what I do is you've got a video, you've got an image here, which the source is that displacement image. I've hidden it with CSS and all the rest of it. And then within the JavaScript, all I do is find that element by its ID, displacement image, and use a source. So in theory, X New Worlds can just upload a new displacement image however they want, try it out, and this should all just work automatically. Yeah, we loop through all of the images and then bind that hover effect onto them using this library by Robin Della. So there, that's kind of the home page and one of the most complicated parts in a nutshell. The last thing to just give you a little clue on is we've got this nice animation coming in. I quite like that, how it kind of fades in from the top gently, really clean. But what you see is when we click about, it fades to white, and then we'll see everything kind of load in or fade in. This was a really cheap hack. Basically, I just make this black background white, and because all the text is already white, it looks like it just fades out, which is really cool. So let's just jump through some of the rest of the pages now. I don't think there's anything really to add on the about page, but again, what you'll see is these are collection lists that go through to the different tables in Airtable, and the same again for features, just a collection list looping through and then taking the relevant parts. So they really like this interface of just having this abstracted, clean CMS that's actually really performant. You don't need to wait for anything to load, a lot quicker to update the content than on something like Webflow. And we can add new fields and we can, we can adjust as needed, but it just having that separation really enables this app to scale quite well. Editing Sam here. I'm just wrapping up the final edit, but I wanted to say real quick that one thing we added, that basically the exhibitions and the features didn't reflect the order that was in Airtable. So we added a parameter to the resource request URL, and this has nothing to do with Webstudio. This is just part of Airtable's API, where they enable you to link to a specific view, and the order of the request items reflects the order of the view. So really cool feature from Airtable, just something that you might find quite helpful. By the way, if you see anything as I'm scrolling around and you want me to go into it, do let me know and I can do a follow-up, or let me know down in the comments and we can have a discussion about anything you see. And then the contact page is just a contact page. So now we get onto this portfolio, which, as you see, I've just clicked on it now. You can see that it's got a login. It's not a real OR system. I actually faked this with JavaScript. New Worlds can send them a username and password. They can log in and show the NDA protected content, I guess, or the stuff that they just don't want to show on the front end of the website. So I implemented this fake login system, which I was pretty proud of. It's super simple. When you put in the right username and password, it goes and fetches the data or it fetches the items inside a portfolio. You can see it's still on Epsom at the moment, but as they begin to add those, load them all up in accordance to this page, and then click through and learn about those projects. I wouldn't recommend this. It's not very secure, but something like this, it's not a big deal. It's not overly protective content. But if you were going to build an application, you can of course build a real OR system. In fact, there might be something in the marketplace. Yeah, super base authentication, so that you can actually use some of the apps that have already been created for Webstudio. Really, really cool. The other really cool aspect to the CMS feature inside of Webstudio is these templates. Now, if we open up the page settings here, you'll see after portfolio, I've got :slug. Now, this is how they determine whether this should be a template page. And you can see there's a little icon there acting as a template page. Now, we put slug. This could be anything. You could write anything, but a common convention is slug here. Now, slug will be the available attribute to use inside of a request to Airtable. Let me explain. If we go into the body element here, we've got a variable. I'm not quite a fan of the naming system that Webstudio use. I don't think a lot of them make sense, but regardless, you can see here we're making a call to the what is it called? the portfolio Airtable. Sorry, that's really hard to see. And then we're filtering by that slug. So we take the slug that's been taken from the URL and we cross-reference it with the slug here. And that means we get that specific item inside of Airtable. Really, really handy. And then all this data that it collects from that request, it's then available in the rest of the page. So here we've got text content and we use the field description. We've got this, which the text content is using the field title. So we have access to all of that information throughout this page template. Really clean, super satisfying to actually implement and use. But the other aspect here is that when it comes to the sitemap, when it comes to SEO and things, the sitemap isn't going to know about what pages are available using this template page. Long story short, Webstudio have made a video where they show you how to get pages from a system like this, from a templated page into your sitemap. Now, the reason why we don't do that and why I can't show you is because, of course, these are pages that I don't want Google to index. There's no link to these pages anywhere. I don't want it to index these links. So we don't add it to the sitemap, but there is a way of doing it, and just know that you need to, if you're going to generate all these pages dynamically, you'll need to add them into the sitemap. Just while we're on the settings here, again, you can see I've added the title here, and this is a good example of that. Really, this is just expecting a string. So what I've got is project and then pipe and then adding the variable to it, and you can do lots of things. You can do ternary statements here. You can do true. You can do false. Anything that basically returns the value you use, it will evaluate the expression, I guess, in Sightline. It's called the expression editor, so that makes perfect sense. But it will evaluate that expression, and basically you can do whatever you want with it then. And then same again here, it's just the description, and I get the image as well, from the actual record. So all of this stuff is available to us. Really, really cool. So I hope that was a great insight into Webstudio. I was certainly very impressed with the speed, the functionality of the tool. It's a really lightweight solution, and not having to pay every single month after. I can host it on my own services. It's a really good tool for a specific set of circumstances. And I hope you enjoyed a bit about my process and like how I go about building things, and just give you an insight on a recent project that I'm particularly proud of. So like, subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, happy no coding.